English.
My name is Huzaifa Pandit and Takbeer Salati is on camera. Today's date is 24th of October 2023. I'm interviewing a legend of sorts, a famous translator and a literary figure renowned for her writings as much as for her contribution to society, Professor Neerja Mattoo. For the first time, the interview is taking place at her residence, the Word House in Gogji Bagh, Srinagar, in India, and is being conducted on behalf of the 1947 Partition Archive. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
And thank you, ma'am, for agreeing to the interview. We are very indebted, and I'm sure this interview is going to go a long way towards enriching the archive. Thank you once again.
I don't know about enriching, but I'll be happy to talk to you about my memories of the partition and whatever else you want to know.
Right,
Thank you for asking me to.
So let's begin with the beginning. Could you please tell your full name for our readers, your full official name?
My official name is Neerja Matoo, but actually my maiden name was Neerja Dhar, but now I'm known as Neerja Matoo. That's my official name.
Where were you born, ma'am, and in what year?
I was born in 1938 in this place in Srinagar, which was called Exchange Road. It was a small kind of a mohalla of 5 or 6 families who had come from the downtown city to live in the civil, as they were known as civil lines, towards the more progressive part of the city. But it was a kind of an oasis of quietness, even though it was surrounded by lots of activity on the roads, cinemas, shopping complexes and whatever. But we were insulated from that noise. It was a quiet neighborhood and like-minded people lived there. All of them at that time were Kashmiri Pandits who wanted to be socially and academically advanced, and they were all fond of education, they were all educated, they were all professionals, and so they were living a very civilized life in the civil lines, and we were interacting with one another. It was like one huge family, this mohalla was. And my father was a professor of English.
What was his name?
Professor Shyamlal Dhar. He is the one who had actually come from downtown. Originally, our family belonged to Safakadal, where all the Dhar clan used to live. So we were all located in Safakadal, but my father had an English education, so he had modern ideas. So he moved from the inner city to this modern area of Srinagar and built a bungalow in the kind of British style, and moved there where we had modern plumbing and everything. And so he taught English, but interestingly, he had begun his career as a lecturer in physics, because he was also physics, because he had done his physics from Jammu, Prince of Wales College, and then later on he was very much, actually he was right from the beginning, and kind of an Anglophile. He loved English literature, he loved to listen to the BBC, and he went as a private student to Punjab University and did his masters in English, and then switched over from physics to English. So in our house, English was a familiar language, because he, along with my 2 eldest brothers who were much older than me, I was the youngest in the family, only 2 languages were spoken, Kashmiri and English. No Hindi, no Urdu. We hardly knew any.
Lovely. You said your family had migrated from downtown
Yes.
to Exchange Road.
Yes.
So where were you originally from? Downtown?
Originally,
or even before that where you had migrated?
No. My father's family had been in Safakadal since the time of Akbar, they say. Because that ancestor was one of those Kashmiri Pandits who had left in the medieval times under this Afghan rule, But then, when with this Akbar's conquest of Kashmir, he had come down with him. He was in the army, and then this whole
around. That would be around 1400.
They had migrated around 15th century. But then when Akbar came, they came back with him because they had this family, the Udhars, had settled in Golconda. Okay. Actually, in the Golconda fort, Hyderabad, present Hyderabad, there is a name also of this gentleman who was our ancestor, and strangely enough, all the Dhars are from that very clan. And they had all come and settled down in Safakadal area, near Eidgah.
So from Kashmir to Hyderabad, then from Hyderabad to back to Kashmir
and Safakadal. Seventh, the last bridge on the river Jhelum.
Safakadal.
And this particular mohalla was known as Dudmut Khanka. Khanka-e-Sokhta.
Why was it named so?
I have no idea. I'm sorry, I don't remember. But there might have been a khanka there which had been burned down or had got burned down. But that whole mohalla was known as Khanka-e-Sokhta. And from there you could go to Eidgah, and my older brothers, Eidgah was their playground. We used to play hockey, football, whatever there. But you see, I was born in this house in the Exchange Road, while my two brothers and my eldest sister, they were all born in Safakadal. And they were about 9 or 10 years old when they came to Exchange Road.
So from your mother's side?
From my mother's side, they continued to be in downtown near Habakadal. This was
what was she called?
They were Nehrus. My mother's family was Nehru.
What was her name?
Her name was Tulsi.
Tulsi Nehru.
Tulsi Nehru. But after marriage, Kashmiri Pandits used to give a new name to their daughters-in-law. Then she was known as Umavati Dhar.
Umavati. And she was from where?
From this part near Habakadal, which was called Brei Kujantal. The mohalla was called Brei Kujantal. They had a huge old kind of a Kashmiri Pandit house which used to fascinate me as a child because ours was a modern house. It didn't have any surprises. But that house was a 4-story house. It had a kani right on top, and it had balconies which were known as dubs. And there was a shine sheen, and there were these kind of latticed shutters and everything. So we used to find it fascinating. And the veranda was one large, huge stone, one single stone. And the door was also carved. So that was a kind of an exotic place for us. And they had a traditional way of living, but my father wouldn't allow us to spend a night outside the home. Wherever we went, we had to be back, sleep in our own beds.
And by your mother's side, had they also migrated during Akbar's time?
No, they had always been here. You see, there is a distinction between two types of Kashmiri Pandits, which you may not be aware of. One clan is known as Banamasi, the other part is known as Malamasi.
Okay.
Banamasis are the people who had migrated but come back.
Okay.
And Malmasis
like your father's side.
Yes, but Malmasis were those who had always been here. So my mother's family were Malmasis, and we were Banmasis. And also some festivals used to be celebrated by Kashmiri Pandits on 2 different dates. Banmasis on one date and Balmasis on another. Oh. I don't know what the reason was, because I remember it used to be very great fun. Shivratri is a very important festival of Kashmiri Pandits. So we used to celebrate Shivratri in February. But my Matamal, my mother's family, would celebrate it after about a month. So we had 2 Shivratri festivals.
So your childhood was spent in almost 2 different festivals, every festival celebrated twice.
And I used to find my mother's parental house fascinating because it was like a medieval kind of a thing. Whereas in our house there were no such surprises. It was a modern bungalow, practical and everything.
Was your mother a working woman too?
No, not at all. But she was educated. She was schooled at home. She could read and write Hindi. And English also she could read later on, but no other language. She didn't go to school or anything.
She didn't go to
No,
school.
but the tradition was that everyone would be literate.
Okay.
So all my aunts, my mother's sisters-in-law, sister, everyone, they could all read and write, but they had not gone to school.
Let's talk a bit about your childhood. You said you were born in Exchange Road.
Yes.
And you gave us a bit of an insight into your childhood, that you celebrated festivals twice. Now, although there's doubt, many people have doubted that formal education needs to be there for anyone who is a poet. You're not a poet, but you're a translator, and you have translated quite a bit. But did you have any kind of, I think you did have, but for our viewers, where did you start your education? What was the education you
I was also
received?
homeschooled. Kashmiri Pandit girls actually didn't go to school those days, even though schools had been established. But respectable kind of people preferred to school their daughters at home. So we had a masterji, a tutor, who used to come, and my sister and I, because my eldest sister was older, she was about 11 years older than me. So she wasn't a part of this educational group in the home. But my two cousins, my uncles, because we were a joint family. My father had one brother, that's all. So his family, small children, and our part of the family, we were together, and this Masterji would come and teach. But because my sister and my cousin were older than me, he was concentrating on them. But I don't know how I learned to
Do you
read.
remember his name?
The first Masterji his name was Brijnath. Brijnath Kaul. Brijnath Kaul later on became trained as an engineer. I think he retired as a chief engineer later on. But he was a young man, but he was teaching us. So that's how it was. So I was telling you that the concentration was on the older children, so I was left to my own devices. But the two things which I learned very quickly, must have learned because I don't remember when, Hindi and English. I could read.
The two languages.
The two languages I could read, and then I became a voracious reader. My only occupation was finding any kind of a written thing. My eldest sister's Hindi books, my brother's English books, things. So that was mostly my occupation. I was not an athletic person, and people used to say that she's a bit of a reclusive person because she sits and this is what she finds interesting. Once I got involved in a book, I couldn't put it down.
Any one book which you remember from that time?
I remember the Hindi books first because they were accessible. I read almost the whole of Premchand. You may have heard his name.
Yes, ma'am.
And what was his other person's name? Prasad, poet, Maithili Sharan Gupt, Tulsi Das, Sur Das, because my sister had qualified for an honours degree in Hindi, which was known as Prabhakar. So because of her, there were all these Hindi books. And even this Vatsyayan, again, who became so famous later on, but I had read him. And then of course I read, first of all, Anna Karenina, I remember Pearl Buck's Good Earth. What else do I remember? Yes, Charles Dickens, everything by Charles Dickens. Even some thrillers like Rider Haggard and others. I was not very discriminating, whatever was available I would read. But then my father was transferred to Jammu when I was about less than 12 years old. And then because I was the youngest, I and my mother, I and a little niece whom my mother had raised, we travelled to Jammu. For the first time, it was in, I think, 1950. Yes, autumn of 1950. So once we were there, my father said, I don't know anyone here who can school you privately. So he took me to the school, which was quite close. This was known as Government Girls High School, Kachi Chhavni. So he took me there and took me to the headmistress's room, asked her to test me and put me in whatever class I was fit for. Those days they used to introduce English in the 6th class only. Up to 5th, nobody knew any English. So she thought that she should test me in English. That was the only thing I knew. So she was quite impressed. She said, we'll put her in class 9. But little realizing that I didn't know anything else. But anyway, for the first time I had this regular schooling. But when the time came for this annual examination, from 9th to 10th, I was hardly prepared for the other formal subjects at all. But anyway, I managed the others, but we used to have a choice for girls. Instead of full mathematics, you could do what was known as domestic arithmetic and household accounts. It was called the subject. One paper was pure arithmetic, and the other paper was the uses of drawing a budget or whatever. No, it was good for good housewives. So I actually chose that because algebra I had absolutely no idea of. The Master Ji at home had never bothered to know whether I had picked up any maths or not. So anyway, so when this exam came from 9th to 10th, it was in March. I did well, fairly well in everything else, but in this subject,
Mathematics.
my children will be quite embarrassed when I tell you what my score was. It was 19 out of 200.
Oh.
I don't know how I got that 19 also. So when I came, but they said promoted to class 10. They thought something must have happened. She probably was ill or something. So they gave me the benefit of the doubt and put me in class 10. So when I brought my report home, for the first time my father realized that I was illiterate as far as this one important subject was concerned. You couldn't pass matriculation if you didn't pass in all subjects those days. So, but fortunately, at that very time, my father was transferred back to Srinagar. And then he began to search for a good tutor who would be good at this arithmetic thing. And he found one, and you will be surprised, that gentleman was only a matriculate. But he was a genius as far as arithmetic is concerned. Because you see, from 19 out of 200, in my matriculation I scored 178 out of 200.
Wow,
because my arithmetic became perfect. You cannot imagine. He was I must admit, he is the one who transformed my life. Otherwise I wouldn't have been able to pass matriculation. His name was Master Takbeer. He was from a village actually. But he knew, and the kind of things which children are taught now, these problem-solving things. He had acquired that knowledge, I don't know how, instinctively or what. So he would set me a puzzle every day before he went home. Okay, today I went to the market, I don't know how much money I had, but I spent half of it on fruit, and whatever was left, half of it on medicines or whatever. In the end I discovered I had just 5 rupees. Please tell me what I had in the beginning. For the first time I understood fractions and then transformed actually as if a cloud was lifted. So that's my full credit for my education I should give to Master Takbeer.
You also did a master's in English.
No, then after that, you see, once I passed matriculation, there was already a women's college. It had been established in 1950. And I had finished my matric in 52. My sister was already going there to do her BA. So automatically, and we were living very close. Our house was just 5 minutes away from the women's college. And then the question didn't arise about my further education. I went, followed my sister. And the college also, it was a different college at that time. It was a very forward-looking, modern institute in which it seemed to us girls that the sky was the limit. We could do everything. There was hardly any parda. There were girls who used to come with burqa, but they would take it off near the gatekeeper's room, and everybody was the same. Nobody wore a tika or anything. There was no distinction between Pandit and Muslim. And the principal was a very remarkable woman, Mahmooda Ahmed Ali Shah. You may have heard her name. She had been educated in Lahore. had interacted with intellectuals of Punjab in the early 1930s. And then she had come back to Kashmir and joined the education department, and then she finally became the principal of this college. So her whole advice to women was they should not feel inferior in any way. In the assembly every day she would tell girls, "Sar uncha karke chalo," don't bend your head, and there is nothing that you cannot do. And she used to go personally to the interior city, persuade parents to send their girls to college after they had done their matriculation. And some of those ladies were employed as teachers in primary schools. So after matriculation, she would persuade them to take leave and improve their qualification. Many of them, in my own class, there were about 4 or 5 such ladies who were almost my mother's age.
Mm-hmm.
So she had this great desire to transform Kashmiri women into modern thinking women for whom there were no barriers, nothing. So I think I grew up in the college under her guidance. We used to do lots of other activities apart from studying. Plays, musical performances, debates, and also inter-college competitions in different kinds, games, everything. So it was a completely free world which we breathed. And it continued to be like that till the end of the 80s.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. A little about... So that was your college life.
Yes.
And then you further went to Kashmir University to pursue a master's in English.
You see, what happened was that because of my doubt for English literature, I was the only girl who had opted for honors in English in my BA.
Mm.
But for that we had to go to the SP college because there were no other girls doing this, and the SP college professors taught us thrice a week. There were 2 boys and myself. And you can imagine the atmosphere there, that happily I would go from the women's college to SP college all by myself, not be teased or troubled by any boy or anything, and then attend this class and come home. So after that, what had happened is that the Kashmir University, which had been established I think in 1948 or 49, by this time they wanted to introduce a postgraduate courses also. So this English postgraduate they had introduced just a couple of years before this. But it was located in SP College because the university didn't have its own campus or buildings at that time. I'm talking about 1956.
Okay.
So since SP College was also just 5 minutes away, and we had a relationship with SP College because of my father, the library was accessible to us. Because my father had introduced me to the librarian, told him, let her borrow what she wants. As a student or as a school person also in the college. So I had access, so it was like my own extension of my own home. And you would not believe it, that there were only 3 professors who taught us in my master's thing. And the master's those days, I must admit, was a much more difficult thing because there was no semester system, there was no previous or final. You had to sit for one examination at the end of 2 years, covering all your 7 papers. Mm-hmm. And only 3 professors, but they were so, what shall I say, so wonderfully human, so not only good in their subjects, but they were like our, family members who were interested in our welfare. I must name them here. The head of the department was Professor Shyamlal Pandit. And then there was Professor Muhammad Sultan Wahant and Professor Apurab Somnath. These were the 3 people who managed the whole 7-paper course between the 3 of them and taught us with dedication. And I remember even now what they taught us. Even now I remember the phrases they used. So then, so after that, so at the end of the 2 years we had to sit for this examination. But an interesting thing happened with the batch 1 year senior to us.
Please continue.
So 1 year senior to us, the batch, actually we used to have one paper which was called the paper on essay. You had to write one essay for 3 hours. And this was on subject related to literature itself. Some critical question, compare Dickens and Thackeray or some such kind of stuff. So this batch ahead of us, 1 year senior, they saw this paper and they thought they couldn't attempt anything at all. So they rose and they said they would go on strike. And they left the examination hall in protest. We can't understand any of these topics. And the vice chancellor at that time was one gentleman, well-known Islamic jurist, wonderful person who had been ambassador to Egypt, Jawaharlal Nehru's personal friend, A. Faizi. Ali Asghar, I don't remember the full thing. And he was a very strict person. He said, do MA students go on strike on a paper for an essay? No question. They lost 1 year. There was no mercy. Complete year they lost. Next year they appeared with us. So why was I saying this? Just to tell you what kind of a disciplined thing this institution, the university was at that time. And it was not just Kashmir University. It was known as J&K University. Jammu was not a different university. That was established later on.
Right. So you said your father was a professor of English.
Yes.
It implies that, as I can guess, he must have been appointed before partition.
Oh, long before partition.
Long before
My
partition.
father was born in 1901.
Right.
He retired in 1956. So, naturally, it was half a century.
So do you remember, him going about his work before partition? Anything you can remember?
One thing I remember, that you see, before partition, the Maharaja here, you see, in 47 they were ruled by the Maharaja. Maharaja used to have a darbar on Dasara. Today is Dasara.
Yes, today.
Yes. Dasara darbar, where he would expect all gazetted officers to go and pay obeisance to him. And what had to be done was, a couple of days earlier, all these gazetted officers would go to the treasury, pay 15 rupees and get a gold sovereign from there. And then on that day, they would dress up like dogras. Tight pajama, brocade, achkan, safa, and a sword hanging on one belt. So my father had this paraphernalia. And I remember whenever he had to go to this Dasara thing, it used to be a problem, you see, pulling those tight pajamas up his foot. So sometimes they would keep a sheet of paper on the heel to allow for the pajama to move smoothly from the foot to the leg. So this I remember. And then he used to dress up in this paidri and have a sword dangling from the side and go to the Maharaja's darbar. And one by one they would go on a silk handkerchief in their left hand. They would put this gold coin, go and offer it to the Maharaja. He would just nod or something and someone would take the coin from them. And this was happening in 1947 also, when the Kabbali's were also almost at the doorstep and the Maharaja was holding his darbar. They had to quickly wind up the proceedings. So what were you asking me?
Let's talk about, you gave the answer. I was talking about pre-partition.
So this is the pre-partition.
Do you remember? Anything else you remember pre-partition?
I remember having lots of fun and not have a single worry in my mind. Nothing. But partition I remember very clearly.
Yeah, that is what I was going to come next to. When did you first hear about this partition thing?
No, before
and
that.
Where did you hear it?
No, I'll tell you, this I was telling you, this was the time when they had attacked, It was October when the Kabbali's, the tribal invasion took place. So we didn't register it at first. But then what happened suddenly was the lights went off. Because they had attacked Mohara, where the only power station was of the valley was situated.
Yeah, in the Baramulla, no? The
Beyond
command post.
Baramulla.
Uri.
Uri.
It's near Uri. Command
Mohara,
post.
that place was known as Mohara. You must have seen it.
Yeah, sure.
That was a hydro
Recently.
whatever plant. So lights went off, and then I could see, meanwhile there were slogans going on outside. Hamlavar, Khabardar, Hum Kashmiri hai Tayyar. And both my brothers would join that group of people who used to march up and down while we were watching. And then suddenly, one early morning, you see, I wasn't much aware, I was sleeping, but somebody woke me up, we have to leave the house. Because by that time, you see, the tribals had reached the Shalting. And they were about to reach Srinagar after ravaging Uri, Muzaffarabad, Baramulla, everything. They were advancing. So they said that you have to leave the house. All the women and children, the gentlemen stayed back because you see they were supposed to protect whatever. And we were all marched to Drogjan, to Dalgate, where my father's good friends, Miss Mahmooda Ahmad Ali Shah's house was. And Miss Mahmooda Ahmad Ali Shah's brother was a very close friend of my one brother. My brother's name was Anupam Dhar. And Dr. Nasir, they were childhood friends. So they decided that we would be safe in their house. We didn't seek shelter in any Hindu house or anything. My grandmother, my mother, my chachi, my aunt, her children, my brothers, sisters, and two little nieces who were born a year earlier. All of us, along with this Kashmiri Pandit cook we had, we were taken to that house. And we met the family. They said, please don't worry, you can sit here, stay happily. And my grandmother didn't eat outside, nor my mother, nor my aunt. They did not eat food in a Muslim house. So for them, they provided a portable chola and some pots and pans. So the Kashmiri Pandit cook used to cook for them, whereas we ate with the rest of the family, the children. So for 2 days we were there, not much aware of what was happening. But before we left, the image clear in my mind is that my aunt and my mother, they were collecting whatever gold jewelry they had in the house and sort of wearing a kind of a waistcoat into pockets of which they stuffed all this stuff they had. So, and my aunt's sister was living with us those days. My aunt had specially through the night made pockets for under her shirt and everything that was also stuffed with jewelry. And in that state we marched to that place where while the gentlemen, my two brothers, joined the local militia. And my number 2 brother also was in the battle. He fought in Uri, then he fought in Badaba, then he came home. And unfortunately one young man from our own Mohalla, Pushkar Zadu, was about the same age as my brothers. He had also joined the militia, but he was killed in the tribal invasion. That was such a huge tragedy for the whole Mohalla, because I told you the Mohalla was like one large family. This Pushkar Zadu young man's death was devastating for the whole Mohalla. But so people don't remember at this time what sacrifices Kashmiris made to protect their homeland from the tribal invaders. And how many of them died also in the process. So then after 2 days we came back, but we had no lights. And but anyway, the tribals had been repulsed, and the whole family was here. And all the time, during the day, we would be playing, whereas the elder ladies as well as the men used to be pounding paddy for their rice, because the mills had all stopped working, there was no light, and we used to get paddy from our land. So what was to be done? How would you eat? How would you make a meal? So everybody pitched in with this mortar and pestle, kans and mohur, and they were pounding. And then, but we children didn't feel any lack. We thought it was fun because there was no study, there was nothing. And what we used to play, word games in the evening, word building, finding capital names of capitals starting with which capital alphabet or what. So we kept ourselves busy. And before that, I must tell you, during the years of the war, my father and my two brothers would be following the whole campaign of the Allies and the Axis powers. They had a large cloth map on which they would trace their movements. So for me, you see, the whole idea of an atlas, the whole idea of a global world was right from the beginning. I could imagine where England is and where Australia, because they were charting the course of these, armies.
You said, ma'am, your brother fought the tribals.
Yes.
When he was fighting, obviously the family must have been
terribly
worried,
very terribly worried. And I remember when he finally came back, my father asked him to take off all his clothes. They should be burned, because he said he must have picked up I don't know how many lice. My father said, don't let him do that, we'll let him have a thorough bath outside and then come.
So how did you keep in touch with him? Or with the news?
No, there was no news of him. It was just anxiety, worry. But my elder brother, you see, had been training as an engineer from Banaras Hindu University. So in the late 47, he had to go back to finish his exam. So he wasn't there. But this brother of mine was there. And
do you happen to remember anything about those years, the assassination of Gandhi?
Yes, of course I remember. That was January. Actually, what had happened was that during this tribal invasion type of stuff, they had set up a women's self-defense corps. And there was this lady who had come from England. She was a Marxist along with her husband, Freda Bedi. And her husband was B.P.L. Bedi. In fact, Freda Bedi is the one who is supposed to have helped draft the Naya Kashmir resolution of Sheikh Abdullah.
Right.
So she was here, yes, and my brother was here also, he was associated with them. And then what happened? Yes, my elder brother, I told you, went back to Banaras to finish his this thing. And you were asking me some questions.
I was asking you
about Gandhi's, yes.
Gandhi.
So I was coming to that, that's why I mentioned the Women's Self-Defense Corps. So there was a lot of Red Cross activity also happening at the same time, because there were refugees from Muzaffarabad, others, and both my sisters were involved in that. They used to go around and my sister caught smallpox. And smallpox those days was a dreadful thing. So she was isolated, all of her were vaccinated, but she, I don't know what had happened, she got it. So there was worry for her, and in that context I remember suddenly my father devastated. They have shot dead Mahatma Gandhi. And the thing is, we had only met Mahatma Gandhi a few months earlier. He had come to Kashmir and he was staying in a house in Barzala. There was one gentleman who was a Gandhian. He had kept his house on his disposal. So my father took us, me, my sister and my cousin, to meet Gandhiji, because we had heard of Gandhiji. For us it was a wonderful moment, and he just sat there. And I remember vividly, he had just wearing his dhoti and a kind of a dupatta, like a, what should I say, like a chadar kind of thing. This was, I think, October, maybe November.
After the which year?
47.
November 47.
Yes, after the tribal invasion, he had come, and I remember my cousin asking him, Gandhi ji, Kashmir ka kya hoga? And Gandhi said, Kashmir ke jo log kahenge wo hoga. This I remember clearly. A wide chest he had, and small spectacles, bald absolutely. So then my father, as I was telling you, had heard this news. So there was such gloom in the house, I can't tell you, as if a family member had died. But I don't remember any celebrations of Independence Day. 15th August I don't remember at all. I don't know why it is. I have no memories of that. I have memories of the tribal invasion.
So then, ma'am, when did you after pursuing a post-graduation,
Yes.
I believe you got a job
That is an interesting
MA
thing.
Road.
I
Can
see,
you tell us about that?
I'll tell you. You see, after this matter, the result came out, so nobody thought I was going to work because in my family no woman had worked till then. And my father said, "Ki, now you have to get married." He said very simply, and they had also maybe thought of someone whom I was supposed to marry. So then a friend of mine who was trained in music and she had a qualification in music came to me. She said, "I've seen an advertisement, Women's College wants a lecturer in music. So I would like to apply, but I'm scared of Mahmooda ji. She has a good opinion of you. Why don't you come?"
What was your friend's name?
Her name was Nancy Kong, she was at that time. Then she became Nancy Dhar. She then got married to my cousin. So Nancy had been my class fellow in college. Together we had done our BA and even our MA together. She had also done an MA. So then I said, "Okay, I'll come with you." So we went to see Mahmooda ji in her office. So she was very happy. Said, "तुम्हारा रिजल्ट निकल गया?" "नहीं, तुम्हारा तो रिजल्ट निकल गया होगा." मैंने कहा, "हाँ जी, हाँ निकला." "तो क्या कर रही हो?" मैंने कहा, "अभी तो निकला रिजल्ट, कुछ थोड़े दिन ही हुए थे." She said, "ये Zia Durrani, our professor of English, is going on study leave. You come and take her classes from tomorrow." I couldn't believe it. And the head of department was Professor Sakina Hassan. She was from Lucknow and she had taught us in BA. Very wonderful lady, and she had a good opinion of me as a student. She said, "Yes, Neerja, you have to do it. I am giving you her registers. Come tomorrow and take the class." So I went home.
Like that.
Just like that. I went home very excited. So my father didn't take me seriously at all. And my mother said, "Kya bakwas kar? There's no question of you going to teach." But the college was just 5 minutes away. So the next morning, I very confidently borrowed my mother's sari. Till then I used to wear salwar kameez as a student. So I thought I should look a little dignified now that I have to take a class. Borrowed a sari from my mother and went and presented myself before Sakina Hassan. She handed over the register. She said, "Go and take this." This was the third year general English class. Rowdy, there were about 70 students. But I don't know why I didn't feel at all intimidated or anything. So I went in, so they were just whispering among themselves, "Who is this character?" But anyway, I went to the days and I asked them what they were doing, and I took the class normally. And then came home, but before I had reached home, the news had travelled because many of the students must have told their parents at home कि ये तो नई टीचर आई है, मिस धर उसका नाम है.
You want to?
नहीं, I'm okay. So my father didn't even realize that I had actually gone to take a class. My mother also thought it was just a game I was playing. But then my cousin from Safa Kadal turned up. He said, "What have we heard? She has gone to teach in a college." So my mother said, "Is that where you went?" I said, "Yes, of course." I was very confident, thanks to Mahmooda ji and Sakina Hassan. So, but then there was a huge, all hell broke loose. Even my uncle was very angry with my father for letting me go. Who does this? Who will marry her? No respectable family will want to have anything to do with her. But I don't know how, I was just 20 years old at that time. But God gave me some courage. I stood my ground. I said, "I can't let the students down. They are happy with what I did. I want to continue." And Mahmooda ji, like a bulwark, she called my father, said, "You can't do this. ये पढ़े लिखे आदमी आप ऐसे करेंगे?" Because he was also intimidated by his relatives and all. And my mother was furious. And whatever proposals of marriage had come were all withdrawn. So my mother was really thinking, what is going to happen to her now? I was the youngest in the family.
So who eventually married you?
Oh!
And when?
You know what happened? My eldest brother stood by my side. He told my father, there is nothing doing. She has this, we can't stop her. And this is a new age for this ridiculous, we can't listen to these people. So I happily continued. And then this offer came from this illustrious Matoo family, whose son was a forest officer already, and they were keen that they should have an educated girl as their daughter-in-law. The offer came, and my father initially was a little reluctant because we were a middle-class family and they were kind of feudals, my in-laws. But my father-in-law came to our house, told my father that we value education, because my mother-in-law came from the Punjab. She was a Kashmiri, but her family had migrated, I don't know in which century. They were settled in Lahore and Amritsar. So she was literate, she was fond of books, she used to read and everything. So they thought it would be good to have an educated daughter-in-law. So that's how it happened.
So did they support your work?
Oh yes, my mother-in-law was very supportive, very supportive. She was proud of me. She used to tell people she teaches in a college and everybody respects her and everything. She was, you see, she was a tough lady, but she had good ideas about education.
So let's fast forward a bit. You obviously had an illustrious career as a lecturer and you rose through the ranks. Let's come now to the turbulent 80s, late 80s.
Late 80s.
By late 80s, you were working as a professor?
I'll tell you what happened with me. I joined college in 1958. And in 1967, they had, how did you manage to do that? His answer used to be with brains. Nothing else with brains. If you have brains, you can do many things. I think a high IQ is necessary, no matter what.
Right. You were talking about the principal.
You see, because I had no interest in administration that way, I didn't want to go to the secretariats and whatever. I was very happy teaching and I had a free hand. I could invite whoever I wanted to deliver lectures. We held seminars. We had a free hand in buying books for the library. So I was happy doing it. And the English department was a large department. We had 19 people in it. So I was happy. And also we thought that this formality of an interview for principalship is there. They must have already chosen somebody for the sake of appearances. They are calling for an interview. But the principal of the college at that time was Mrs. Krishna Misri. She said, no, you can't refuse to go. When they ask you to appear for an interview, you go. You don't need to become the principal. And in any case, she also thought that they wouldn't choose me. But I don't know what happened. They had an expert from outside. So whatever performance I made, they were stuck with me. They couldn't appoint me as a principal because their slot was already reserved for a very important lady. But then they couldn't ignore me either. So they created a special situation, principal, but continued to be head of Department of English and Women's College. So I got the grade and the status, but I never used the status. I was principal from 81 onwards, but no administrative work at all. And from the 80s, you'll be surprised, we did so much in the college. We had so many seminars and you will probably not believe it, but in 1983 we invited Salman Rushdie to the college after he had won the Booker Prize in 82. The British Council had brought him on a tour of Indian universities. So because we had a good liaison with the British Council, whoever came, they would inform us and we would invite them. So he came. So we had a seminar for him. 2 papers were read by the postgraduate Department of English and I read 1 paper and he read from his book. He reacted to these things, answered questions. He was such a humble person, you would not believe it. Not the same Salman Rushdie post, whatever, whichever, 87 or 88. So So I was given a free hand, I was having fun. I went, the British Council gave me a visitorship to the University of Oxford. So I went there for about 6 months. So happily, without worry of administration or anything. And it continued till 89, end of 89.
Right. And 89 was sort of an epoch.
It was a sudden, the suddenness with which it came. That is the thing. Nobody had suspected anything. Towards the end of the 80s, I think in 89 itself, I was taking a class and one girl came in excited. Madam, there are some leaflets in the college. I have picked up one. I said, read it out. So it was an appeal to the students. Hamari maudabana guzarish hai that you should, the girls should wear a parda. And our request to Pandit girls is that they should apply a tika so that they are not troubled. So when these girls saw this and they said, what is this? What rubbish is this? From tomorrow we'll all wear a tika. That was the kind of spirit of confidence they had, and that was the degree of unawareness and ignorance they had about what was happening.
So you had no idea about
militancy
was
my class
going to
had no idea. It was summer of 88, 89. I remember clearly. And then when 89 when this abduction of Rubaiya Saeed happened, that is the first time we realized that, because till then there had been killings of people, selective killings. But we thought they were just aberrations, God knows what it is. It doesn't mean the whole community is at risk. So then this lady was abducted, college was still functioning. I think it was in November or beginning of December it happened. And then we couldn't take this whole thing seriously, but there was a kind of a palpable sense of fear among people. But the college closed in December normally, but then everything changed, because when March came the college couldn't open. There was a terrible, what should I say, collapse of administration and everything, killings and migrations we had heard of. We were not aware of those because we were living in this part of the city where there were not many other Kashmiri Pandits, so we were not even aware that people were running away at the beginning of 90. So then this Rubaiya Saeed's kidnapping and then the procession of these released militants, Yasin Malik and Abid Sheikh and whoever, Ashfaq Wani, Javed Nalka, Mushtaq Latram, you can cut it out. I don't want to name.
No, it's fine.
Anyway, so they were taken in a procession through the city and we could watch it on the TV. So we realized that things were collapsing. There was no administration, nothing. But we were happily content that nothing was going to happen to us. And we stayed on. My husband had a job at that time. He was posted as advisor to J&K Industries. So he had a camp office in Jammu. But my father-in-law already had built a house in Jammu also. So my mother-in-law would go to Jammu in October itself, end of October. And then I would also go when the college closed. So my mother-in-law had already left, we were here, my husband and I. On the 19th of January, we decided to travel to Jammu. Never feeling threatened or anything.
Just a coincidence.
Really, just on the 19th, that is the amazing coincidence. So we were traveling by car, because we had luggage and everything. And when we reached, I think, Kazipur, the radio announced that Jagmohan had been appointed as the governor and Farooq Abdullah had resigned. So we thought that this was serious trouble, but still not quite aware of the magnitude of the problem. So we reached Jammu, and that very night my brother-in-law was still staying here with the servant. We had a frantic call from that servant that something terrible is happening. People are marching on the streets, raising slogans. So we feel something terrible is going to happen. So my husband called a police officer here because my husband was still in government. So he called him and told him, what is this? He said, oh no, these are all slogans from the mosques. There are no people marching on the streets. These are just tapes being played in the mosque, don't worry. So we thought it's okay. And then we stayed on in Jammu. But the day we were traveling to Jammu, I must tell you, we used to stop at Pida to have Rajma Chawal lunch. And there we saw truckloads of people going. So somebody said, these are Kashmiri Pandits, please. So we said, we were there until this morning. What has happened suddenly? Obviously, things have been brewing. That's the first time we were aware.
So 19 January you decide to travel. 19 January, which is well known as the day, marked as the day when sort of when exile, migration happened. Formally. It's marked as this red letter day when Kashmiri Pandit migration
But this is just coincidence that we left this morning.
But you happen to see people leaving.
Not in the beginning, but when we reached Pida, which is beyond this Batot.
Very reminiscent of the scenes of partition.
Must be. And then I must tell you another thing, that once we were in Jammu, we then began to hear stories of people being killed, Kashmiri Pandits. That fellow, Satish, was killed. He was working for the telecom department or something. And then they used to say, oh, so-and-so was killed because he was in the intelligence bureau. So-and-so was killed because he was spying or some such thing. They used to attribute reason for killing.
Was anyone known who you killed?
LessShe, the director of this Radio Kashmir. He was killed. He was known to us. Who else? I don't know the others. But LessShe I knew very well. He was a perfectly gentle, wonderful person.
Right. So I want to talk a little more about this migration. So you obviously were not part of the group that migrated.
No, not. And then the only thing I heard about this plan of permanent migration was when, you see, because the colleges were closed, they didn't open till May. That next year, in 1990, they didn't open till a long time. So we were in Jammu. So one day a group of teachers from my college, Kashmiri Pandit, men and women who were teaching in the college, came to see me in the house in Jammu.
In Jammu?
Jammu. We were in Jammu. So they came and I didn't know what they had come for. Anyway, I came downstairs, they were sitting in the garden. So they said, Ji, kaise hai, something. Madam, when the college opens, we have decided we are not going.
Okay.
So you must not go also. I said, I can't say anything because if my husband goes, then I have to go. If he doesn't go, then I'm here. But they said that we have decided we are not going. I said, why? They said, no, there are, you see, outside mosques, there are posters written that Kashmiri Pandits should not come back, they'll be killed. Many of us have been killed. Our names are being pasted outside mosques. So and so, we are waiting for you, that kind of stuff. I said, look, I can't say anything about that. It all depends on my husband's movement. If he goes, I have to go. I can't let him go alone. So in May we came. And then one day they informed the college was open. So I went to the college. But the college was completely different. Everyone was wearing a black abaya, students, teachers, everyone. I couldn't recognize them, this transformation that had taken place over these months. And then very, very few students there were, and they were also wearing the same thing. So I felt a bit uncomfortable, I must tell you the truth. But they welcomed me very warmly. Our principal had already left because she had also received letters of threat. She was a Kashmiri Pandit and her husband taught in the university, and he had been a bit of a Marxist.
What's his name?
Professor Mohanlal Misri, and the lady's name was Krishna Misri. So she came from our own neighborhood. Her brother was that Pushkar Sadhu who was killed by the tribals. So what I'm saying is that she had left because of this threat to her husband, and she had also received those threats. And then somebody was kind of acting as a principal from Navakadar College. The lady had come. And then I said to her that, look, what is the point of my coming? There are hardly any students, nothing. I'm going to apply for leave and stay at home. So I sent an application for study leave. I thought this is the only long leave I can get. So I sent that application and then decided to stay at home. But the next day, this principal who was acting as the principal, she came along with 2 or 3 other teachers to tell me that I have to come. They Benny, do you remember that song they used to sing? I also sang it. Good night, laddies. So गाते गाते उठी सोने के लिए. Good night, laddies, on the King's Highway. नकल करके गा के वो गाते गाते ऊपर गई और नहीं आई.
To think of it, someone dying in like this.
And this complete peace, there was not a thing on her face. जैसे कि बिल्कुल सोई थी. अगर डॉक्टर ने नहीं कहा होता, we would not even believe that she was not there. चलो बेटा अब ये खत्म करते हैं.
Yes, yes.
इसीलिए I tell you, seize the moment. जो कुछ करना है वो करो, कुछ पता नहीं.
So we were talking about you feeling safe in the college.
In the college I felt safe, but I must tell you something. I was not happy, because there were just 3 students for literature class. And then, anyway, whatever it was, we were carrying on until 91 August. That was another very terrible day for us, when an attempt was made to kidnap my husband. Till then we had not ever felt threatened. Till then we were living in a fool's paradise. Our neighbors are good, we haven't done any harm to anyone. But then of course those were not days of logic or anything. But at that time the intervention of my driver was a Muslim, Abdul Ghani Dar. He was a schoolmaster, but part-time driver, because my husband didn't like to use his official car for private work. So for that he had kept it, because my mother-in-law had to go out or he had to go out in the evening. So that morning he was going to the dentist in the early morning when the car was stopped, and the 2 boys asked them to come out and follow them. They had a waiting auto. So my husband tried to argue with them, I'm not an important person, I'm not in politics, what do you want with me? So you will know at the headquarters. At that point, when he was resisting, they took out a gun, pointed it at him, if you don't come with us, we'll kill you just now. At that time, this Abdul Ghani said to them, listen to me for a second, and then you can do what you want. They turned to him, and my husband took that opportunity to run. The door of the next door neighbor was open. He went in, bolted it. He had his wits about him. And meanwhile, the boys tried to chase him, but I think a police gypsy was passing that way, so they ran away. But then this master, we used to call him, because I told you this driver was part-time driver only, otherwise a schoolmaster. He brought the car here, and I thought they had probably forgotten the tooth x-ray, why has the car come back so soon? But he said, please call these Sardars, our neighbors. I said, why? Then he told me, and I didn't know. I said, I don't remember their phone number. What am I going to do? At that time, the phone rang. My husband calling from there. He, don't worry, I'm here. I'll wait for a little while. Meanwhile, everybody had got to know many people from the neighborhood came out and they went to this house, and then my husband was brought in a procession home.
Oh.
So then we didn't know what to do. But before we could take any decision, the police came and everyone, they said we'll move you to a safe zone. My husband said, if you want to take me to a safe zone, then I may as well leave like the others and go to Jammu. I don't know if I can't live in my own house. So they said, okay, we'll give you some security. So that is the security we still have. But we were worried about this master because the very next day, the newspapers those days in the early 90s, you know you are too young, they used to be full of only announcements. No, hardly any news. Announcement, I'm announcing my national conference membership or something, or somebody has died. And here was a news item saying that this group, they call themselves Al-Israel. I don't know for what reason.
Al-Israel.
Israel.
Israeli.
Israel. Al-Israel was this militant group, and they announced in the newspaper that yesterday our boys were on a very important mission, but the intervention of one Abdul Ghani Dar and the Sikhs in the neighborhood spoiled their mission, so we are giving a strict warning to them. So somebody came with this newspaper, so we were terribly worried about what's going to happen to Masterji. But the Sardars came, they said, please don't worry about us, we have made our peace. Because those days the Punjab militancy was also very... So they had links with Simranjit Singh Maan or somebody. So they were let go, but this Masterji had to go underground for months. Then he had meanwhile found out who was the leader of this group through his network, and he was asked to go and present himself to him. So he said some two boys came, they blindfolded me, put me in an auto and took me somewhere. And there when I reached, this was a very luxuriously furnished house, probably down in the city. There were TVs in every room, and then they made me sit. Somebody brought kava. He said, how could I drink kava? My hands were shaking. And then this commander came with two bodyguards on his two sides. Said, Abdul Ghani, galti shaikam. You made a mistake. He said, please, I have a submission, listen to me. There are two things. As a Muslim, I thought that I should be loyal to the people who have been good to me. Jiska namak khaya hai. Besides, if you had this plan, you should have sent me word or told me. I would have not driven the car that day. Otherwise the police would have caught me, they would have killed me, tortured me. That is why I have done this, but please forgive me. I said, okay, we are letting you off with a warning. But I must tell you, to his credit, till the day he died, he never stopped visiting us. Never disconnected with us, in spite of this. So it sort of restores your faith in essential humanity. So we thought, my husband said, I'm not leaving at this time. If they think that they'll drive me away, they are mistaken, I'll go when I feel like going. So he went with Darbar Mo as usual and came back, lived a normal life. That's why we are here. Neighbors are good, friends are loyal.
So on that happy note, I'll just conclude. So how does it feel to have told us about your story? Do you feel the
I want the younger generation to know. I'm very glad you asked me, because unfortunately this history of Kashmir from the 1940s has been wiped away. And I must share something with you, since you are asking me. The other day I was asked by this Islamia college. They had a conference, they wanted me to be there. So then they asked me to say a few things. So they were talking about women's Darbar, but I told them that you have to look at icons from your own history. And among the people I mentioned was this Zonugur. Nobody had heard of her. This new generation knew nothing of her. Whereas in the 40s, she was in the forefront of the Quit Kashmir movement, anti-Maharaja protests. She was the poster girl for those women's self-defense corps also. She was used to be dressed in a piran with a dupatta like this and marching away, red cheeks, tall, well-built young woman. They hadn't heard of her. They hadn't heard of Mahmooda Ahmad Ali Shah. Can you believe it? And the next day, when the newspaper had given the report of what had happened there, they mentioned my name. First of all, two wrong things. They said Padma Shri, but I said, where has this title come from? So ironic. And also Padma Shri, Dr. Neerja. I said, I don't have a
I was only a compounder.
I'm not a doctor. So anyway, and no mention. She so and so talked about Laldat. That's all. They didn't mention Zongo, they didn't mention Lal. So I'm very glad you have interviewed, so that at least I have mentioned Zongo finally to you.
Thank you, ma'am, so much for your precious time.
Hey, my time is not precious.
It really is. It was wonderful talking to you, and I'm sure that whoever views this interview will be enlightened and will benefit from it. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome.